Hi, everyone. Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast. Today we have Chad Zdenek. He is the founder and CEO of CSQ Properties. He is also a rocket science turned entrepreneur, turned real estate guru. His career has spanned 25 years, but the last 7 years, he's built a multifamily and self-storage portfolio over $85 million through syndication and personal investing. Today, he invests actively and passively in multifamily and self-storage projects across the United States. And he's one of those rare investors who invest in California and outside of California. He's also a member of the EO North chapter and a very good friend of mine. We went through the Entrepreneur Master's program at MIT together, and he's such a huge inspiration. We served on boards when he was at EOLA, and it's such a joy to be with you, Chad. Welcome.
Thank you, Kalika. Yeah, this is great. I'm so excited to talk to you. I mean, we know each other really well, so would be curious to see where this conversation goes, but just excited to get on the podcast with you here. And you'll be happy to know that we actually cleared $150 million on the portfolio now. So I think I sent you an old bio there. So it's been growing and we've been busy.
Awesome. And I love your Instagram posts. Tell everyone what your Instagram handle is.
Well, I got a few.
The one where you're always talking is CSQ Properties?
Yeah, that's just at CSQ Properties.
Yeah.
I also have one for my TV hosting stuff, but the one I post more often on is more active is CSQ Properties.
Yes. Tell everyone. So Chad was on the series. Was it for Smithsonian or?
Yeah, Smithsonian and National Geographic called Inside Mighty Machines.
Yes, you guys all have to watch it. He is such a wonderful host and so smart. Like you're so brilliant.
No, that means a lot coming from you, Kalika. Thank you.
You're such a natural just being on those big machines. Maybe you can tell everyone like what that was all about.
Yeah, so that was a great show. So I've been hosting shows for about 12 years now, and just by happenstance kind of fell into it. I guess that's what happened when you live in LA. But yeah, so this last show I did for COVID was called Inside Mighty Machines, originally put on by Smithsonian Channel and then picked up by National Geographic internationally. And basically we dove into these giant machines to figure out how they worked. And I interviewed different designers and contractors. And as we took it apart and disassembled these giant machines, learned a lot about them. So we did like the world's largest oil rig ever disassembled on land. We took that apart. We took apart a steam power plant. We did the largest hovercraft in the world, which used to cross the English Channel, and a few other episodes. So it was a great show, a lot of fun. And yeah, you should check it out. It's a good show.
And it took you around the world.
Yeah, so it was a lot of filming. It was only 6 one-hour episodes, but believe it or not, it was 110 days of filming and travel. I was in probably 8 or 9 different states within the US, 4 different countries. So a lot of travel and a lot of filming. And I never knew that much would go into that type of show. But when you watch it, you'll see like, okay, yeah, this is a really good, high quality show. And it took a long time to film.
Yeah, wonderful. So everyone really has to dive into that. So today we're going to be talking about how to create passive income for business owners and entrepreneurs. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the EO community that listen to this podcast, tens of thousands around the world. What type of advice would you give them when it comes to how real estate will play a vital role in passive income?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And it's actually my passion. And that's really the people who I serve, because I'm an entrepreneur through and through. You might not have realized, but I've started or helped found 6 different companies. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And even when I did my 7-year stint on the space shuttle main engine, I was still very entrepreneurial. I was doing side businesses while working at Boeing. And it's really who I am. And so eventually, when I left Boeing, went and helped grow a company my brother started, who's also an EO. There's actually 3 of us, 3 brothers in EO. And we grew that company from just a couple workers to 75 employees and 3 different warehouse locations. And we were the biggest company in LA doing what we were doing. And it was a great business. I loved it. And then my brother bought me out in 2018, and I had like no other stream of income after the buyout. And that's when I really realized the power of real estate and having a passive income stream, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget about, right? And I know you can relate to this. All of us entrepreneurs can relate to this. Like, you're so involved in your business. And when I say you, I'm talking about entrepreneurs. Like, you live and breathe your business, right? That's what creates the success of the business. You put everything into the business, and you often make a lot of self-sacrifices for the business. And you always pay yourself last, right? You got to pay your employees, you got to pay your vendors, you got to reinvest in the business. And if there's anything left over, then you can pay yourself. And that mentality is really good for success of the business because you're putting so much into it. That is what helps create the success with the business. The problem is that you forgot to take care of yourself along the way. And it's like the example of putting on your face mask first on a plane, the oxygen mask. You're supposed to put your mask on first. And as entrepreneurs, we forget to do that. So what I'm trying to do is help entrepreneurs realize, like, hey, while the business is doing well, maybe I should invest in alternative passive income streams, keyword being passive, so that you can still focus all your energy and your passion in your business because that's what you really love to do. But in the meantime, take care of yourself a little bit on the side. And also, perhaps more important, in the future, you have a passive income stream. And we all know our businesses go up and down through cycles. So when your business is inevitably in one of those down cycles, you can still have this other passive income stream that can help provide for you and your family.
So what's the difference between active and passive investing?
Yeah, so there is like active investing, and I'll speak to it from the real estate side of the world, but it does translate to other areas. But the active investing means like you're actively working in the day-to-day operations of whatever that real estate deal is, right? You're helping with the property management, the asset management, you're working with lenders, you're working on refinancing, you're working with tenants, like all that sort of stuff is active. And you get active income from that, right? You make money from doing that. The passive side means that you are like a limited partner or a passive investor. And basically you invest in the deal and then you own part of that deal and you'll get part of that passive income stream that comes off of it that it generates, but you're actually not doing any work besides being an investor. And that allows you, the passive investor, to work on really what they want to do, or maybe they're retired and they just want to spend time with family or spend time traveling. You do whatever you want to do with your passive income. Is going to provide a lot of freedom for you with respect to time. And that's the passive income side of it.
So many people focus on financial freedom, but you focus on freedom. Why is that?
Yeah, good question. I'm very deliberate about focusing more on freedom. And for me, it's a broader sense of the word. And I look back at Jack Ma from Alibaba, who's one of the richest guys in the world and worth north of $50 billion. And you'd think, okay, wow, this guy has all the freedom in the world. But, when he started saying non-favorable things about the CCP, he disappeared for 4 months and no one knew what happened to him. And even to today, no one really knows what happened to him. But he came back a different person. And to me, that's an example of what it means to lose some freedom, even though you have all the money in the world. So you could argue he was financially free, but he really didn't have freedom for some period of time. And so for me, we have challenges like that at different times in the United States as well, right? I know, like living here in California, a lot of business owners couldn't run their businesses during lockdown here in California, but a lot of other states, you were able to operate their businesses, right? So that's like another, I'll call it a temporary loss of freedom, but that was a big cost for a lot of people, a lot of business owners here in California. So I think it's really important to focus on freedom in its entirety. And financial freedom is just one piece of that puzzle.
So there's a lot of turmoil that's happening right now, recession or around the world. Where do you think the housing market is going?
That's the $1 million question. So, yeah, that's a really good question. So we're filming this in April 2023. We've been going through, very, very fast, the highest in history of interest rates increasing over the last year. We just started getting into the bank collapse, that we've had several banks collapse recently, and the Fed trying to decide, okay, are they going to keep raising interest rates or are they going to lower interest rates? And provide more liquidity into the market to try to backstop these banks that are failing. Like the Federal Reserve is in a very, very difficult place. And that sends shockwaves through the real estate market. Excuse me for my voice. And I've been doing a lot of podcasts. I apologize. But so that provides a lot of instability in the market, a lot of uncertainty, and interest rates tend to correlate well with real estate. So as interest rates, or it's actually inversely proportional, but as interest rates go down, your value of properties would go up because debt is cheaper, and debt leverage is a big part of real estate, right? It's also part of the reason why it's a great investment. But there's a lot of uncertainty from those interest rates. So for me, the two things that I'm focusing on are if I can get into a cash producing asset, meaning each month it's going to peel off some cash, and I have stabilized, fixed long-term debt, and I know that my real estate is still producing cash at that fixed rate debt, that's going to help insulate me a lot from what the interest rates are doing. And inflation is a problem for a lot of people, but in real estate, it's actually good because our rents go up with inflation, right? So that's why you might have heard the term that real estate is a good hedge against inflation, which means as inflation goes up, the rents go up, right? So that helps us. So in real estate, we've actually done really well in that regard. So in this environment, I'm really focused on debt to make sure that I can get good debt coverage and then it's fixed. And as long as it's a cash producing asset, in general, I think it's a good buy. And I'm still very active in buying in this market. And you probably also heard the term, the two best times to invest in real estate are 20 years ago and today. So if you can hold on to the real estate and have a long-term focus on that, whatever happens in that next year, 2 years, 3 years, it really doesn't matter, because in 20 years, I'm going to look back and say, wow, I'm really glad I bought. And I'll give you an example. Like right now, we're able to get discounts on properties that we couldn't get a year ago. A year ago, you were doing best and final offers. It was selling for well above asking price, right? And people were doing it because they felt it was still a good investment at the time. And I would agree that it was, regardless of what happens in 12 months. Like if you have a 5-year time horizon, it's going to be a good investment. So even today, we're able to get discounts on properties, and you wouldn't have had that a year ago. So I think there's money to be made in all markets. You just have to be selective on what you're buying. And sometimes you got to pay attention to some of these other nuances or externalities like the Federal Reserve interest rates.
You said you're also investing not only in California, but outside of California. Where are you investing? Or is that like a secret?
No, it's not a secret. Yeah, so I own quite a few properties here in Southern California, and also own properties in North Carolina, Florida, and Texas. So I think it's good to diversify across different states because different states have different rules and they change over time. And that's really hard to underwrite to, which is really the financial modeling of it. It's hard to model what might happen in the future with respect to legislation. And different states handle it differently. So in my opinion, it's good to be in different states, but also in different asset classes, right? Because they don't all perform the same. On the outside, you might think of real estate as this mass of investments that kind of goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. But if you really get into real estate, you know that there's different asset classes that perform totally differently. Like right now, we know like office space is having a difficult time with remote work, right? It's a poor performing asset class right now, but does that mean it's a good time to buy right now because people are going to eventually come back to work? Like that's another $1 million question. It's hard to answer that. And people are making bets on that right now.
What do you think?
I'll tell you, like, I think you and I have a really good perspective on the entrepreneurial mindset and journey. Like we're so plugged in with so many entrepreneurs, and we know that a lot of entrepreneurs are learning how to adjust their businesses for remote work, right? So I think we do have kind of an inside scoop just from our own network of what people are doing. For me personally, I'm not investing in office, even though you could get, a 20% discount right now or 30% discount on office space. I'm just more concerned about the long-term viability of that asset class. But you look at something like self-storage that does really well. Like in 2008, it did awesome. During COVID, it's done awesome. And that's like an active asset class that I'm investing in now because I think it's going to continue to do very well. So even within real estate, you have different asset classes that are moving. So you really got to educate yourself, kind of learn what's going on in these different asset classes, or know someone who's doing all that research, and then kind of pick it apart because it's much different than just one big asset class of real estate.
So I just read this book called The Nowhere Office. And I got it from the World Economic Forum. There's one of the speakers. And she had talked about there are two types of workers. There's the learners and the leavers. And the learners are the people that are just getting out of college and they need the space. They need the space for them to learn, to be able to communicate, and they want to be, for some reason, in the office. And then as we get to our age where we're disciplined, they're called the leavers. So I just thought that was interesting. There's probably some room for some type of hybrid, but definitely not where it was, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to have a big effect on real estate pricing, right? What's your utilization of these spaces? But you can also look at like industrial spaces, right? When things were slow in manufacturing and industrial space wasn't in as high demand. And then you had ghost kitchens that started renting it out, right? So like ghost kitchen being a kitchen where you don't actually go there to eat, but they're the ones that make the food and then they deliver it through DoorDash or Uber Eats or whoever. And so you're like, wow, that's like a totally new use for an existing space, right? Or you look at hotel conversions that are converting to multifamilies, right? They're taking hotels and converting them to multifamilies, or even office space is being converted, or malls that are being converted. So I think you really do have to kind of have like an innovative look on different unique ways to utilize the space and kind of think outside the box. Like an office building doesn't always have to be just for office, right? And once you start looking at it from that standpoint, and you could do some constructions and kind of retooling of what that space is actually used for, then all of a sudden it does become a lot more valuable. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with real estate.
Yeah, like Brett Wynn wants to do that, show all his beautiful cars and have it like an event space for that, So Brett Wynn is one of our awesome members at EO, our president-elect here. So I know you know Brett, right?
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah. So what is syndication?
So syndication is a pretty powerful approach to getting into real estate without some of the risk or expertise that you might need. So in a nutshell, a syndication is a group of investors that buy an asset or business or whatever it is. So it's like a pooling of resources to achieve a business need. In the real estate space, you have the limited investors or limited partners, and then you have the general partners. So the general partners are the ones that are running the deal. They find the deal, they get all the financing together, and then they operate the deal. Like those are the general partners. And they create what's called a syndication to bring on the limited partners, traditionally to purchase the equity side of the deal or to provide the money for the equity side of the deal. So you would still have bank financing. But then in terms of the down payment and any construction costs, any sort of reserves that are needed, that would come from the limited partners who are contributing the money or investing the money into the syndication. And generally it's done through an LLC, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs are familiar with. So your managing members of the LLC are the general partners, and your limited members are the limited partners. And so they form and own this LLC in different percentages, depending how much you contribute. And that LLC holds title to the property and will run it. And then they split the profits and also split the gains from the sale at the end once it's eventually sold, and split it up between the general partners and limited partners. So that's at the 10,000 foot level. That's how a syndication works. And some of the advantages there are, like, as a limited partner, you don't necessarily have to know anything about real estate. You have to have some money. And if you have some money, then you find a team that you know, like, and trust, and you're investing with them, right? The other thing it does too, like even let's say that someone's very wealthy and they could buy the building on their own. Well, that's a lot of exposure to own one property. Like, what if you could spread that out over like 5 different properties and just invest, let's say $100,000 across 5 different properties? Well, now you're diversified quite a bit more and you don't have all your eggs in that one basket, right? So it's a great way to diversify risk and get into these really institutional quality deals that you normally wouldn't do on your own.
How do you select the properties that you buy? Like, what do you have like a formula?
So it varies and it depends kind of on what the objective is of the investment. So if I'm investing in Southern California, that's like where my expertise is, my area. Like I know, born and raised here, like I know Southern California really well. I know the brokers, I know the lenders, the loan brokers, real estate brokers. Like that's kind of my network. So in that example, I would be looking for whether it's multifamily or I also own a medical building, self-storage. Like I'm looking in LA through my network to find properties. And a lot of that, it comes from broker relations. It's very much a relationship-based business. So basically, we're working with brokers, whether it's an on-market deal or off-market deal, they bring the deal to me typically. And then I would look at the financial modeling or the underwriting of it to see, okay, how does this perform financially? I'd also work with a loan broker to say, okay, what kind of debt can I get on this property? Plug that into the model, and then really look to see how it would perform over the next 3 to 5 years. Sometimes also, depending how far you are in the process, working with contractors to figure out what the construction cost would be, depending on what you're doing on the deal. So there's a lot of pieces that go into that puzzle. And that's like on the deals that I'm a part of here in LA. Now, if they're out of state deals, you need to lean on and leverage a lot more with other partners. So like in LA, I've done my own deals where I'm the solo general partner and I'm doing everything from A to Z. On the out of state deals, I don't want to be that guy. I can't be that guy. I can't be out of state every week. That's not what I want to do. So you find partners and you kind of get together with partners that would have a different strength on that general partner team. So you might have someone who's a CPA finance background and they know the numbers really well. You could have a contractor engineer type guy like me that knows the construction very well. You could have a property manager type person that knows kind of the operation day-to-day type of stuff really well. You might have someone that has the connections with the brokers to find the deals. And we're working with wholesalers to find deals. Like that type of person handles that part of it. So you really can get a lot of partners to take down some of these deals. And they're big deals, right? I mean, like the last one I did was a $67 million deal in Jacksonville. I did a $53 million deal in Orlando. So they tend to be like really big deals to be able to support a large team. And in those examples, I'm really putting my stock in my relationships with these partners. And I'm relying on them, or maybe that one person knows deals for that market. I got to rely on that person to really know the market, to really know the brokers. And because I can't establish these relationships in all these different places, right? So really what I focus on for out of state is establishing those really good relationships with potential partners and investing alongside with them, sometimes investing in their own deals, just me as a limited partner, right? I'll just invest in their deals to kind of see how it's going. And you kind of learn a lot about a person that way. And then eventually doing a deal with them. And that's kind of how it works for the out-of-state deals.
But you bring a lot to the table because you are a licensed general contractor, you are a professional engineer, you're a former CEO or founder of like 6 different companies, you have like triple master degrees, right? So you probably have like also this like spidey sense, don't you think?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And you mentioned it earlier, like you and I, we both have had long careers in entrepreneurship. And I know you own and run multiple businesses. And it's interesting because going through these different stages of life, like you always pick up different things, different experiences that you have. And when you're going through it, whether it's good or bad, like you never know how that experience will help you later, right? But going back to that book you saw at the World Economic Forum, talking about us as leaders, not learners, like we're using our background as leaders or our background through the learning process, but at different times in our journey, we learn different things, right? And we might not know how that's going to come in handy later, right? But
Right.
then it does. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, I went through this 10 years ago and this is what happened. And this is how I did it. And I think that might really help me in today's issue. And what I learned is it doesn't really matter what business you were in before. There's a lot that can translate to different businesses, right? And I know like you run very different businesses, but I'm sure that you can relate that your background, things that you learned in one business, you're like, wow, that really is applicable. I didn't think about it at the time when it happened 5 or 10 years ago, but now I can really lean on that experience and it's going to help me in this. So yeah, I've had a very diverse, like kind of meandering path over the years, but it does come in handy a lot. And I'm able to be kind of like a chameleon for these partnership groups, right? Let's say the partners have three strengths and I can fit that fourth, right? Because I've done all the different aspects of these deals, which is kind of rare. Most people haven't done that in my industry. And so I'm able to kind of mold myself to help where's needed. So I do different things on different deals. It's not like I'm just doing the construction on every deal I'm on. I'm in charge of the construction. So sometimes it varies a bit. And for me, also kind of being the ADHD entrepreneur, I love that part of it, right? Because otherwise
Yeah.
I'd be bored if I was doing the same thing on all these different deals. But one, it helps me and my personality to do different things on different deals. But two, I think that makes me a better operator, better real estate investor, because I have a good understanding of all the different aspects of real estate. So those are the things that I bring to these out-of-state partnerships.
I also think that you're so charismatic and you're also such a fantastic communicator. Clarity really, I think, is like your essence. You know how to communicate as a TV host. I mean, gosh, they paid you to actually do these series. I mean, it really helps, right? To be clear.
Yeah, no, you're right. I appreciate you saying that. And it does. And it's interesting. When I was at Boeing, I was the engineer that was able to communicate things. And so they made me a team lead like pretty quick. And I was doing all these presentations to NASA because I could kind of break down these complex subjects to make them understandable to, non-technical engineers. And that's actually what got me into the TV hosting, was I could kind of break down these complex theories so normal people could understand it. And when you're dealing with real estate investors, normally these are very successful, wealthy, smart people in their own right, but real estate isn't their expertise. So I need to be able to break down the complexities of real estate so that a very smart person in their own world can understand it and then make some decisions on it, right? It's been said, a confused mind doesn't act. So if they're confused, they're not going to say, it's too complicated, or I don't understand it, I'm out, right? But if you can actually get past that and explain it in ways that make sense, then in the end, they're going to have a big benefit going back to the entrepreneur, because they'll have this passive income stream when they sell their business or when it goes through the downturn. And for me, I'm helping out my people. And that's why it's so important to me.
Yeah. And they also, you had mentioned ADHD, they want it delivered in like a short amount of time.
Yeah. Concise. It's funny. I was at a conference and we had these breakout groups, and you only had like 3 minutes to talk. And they said, spend your words like they're $100 bills. Every word's $100 bill, right? And when you're talking to these high net worth people, their time is worth a lot of money. So if you kind of come at that mentality, yeah, you got to get very concise, get to the meat of it. Don't throw in a whole lot of fluff unless they want to go there later, but don't lead with that, and give them just the short amount of stuff that they need, because they're very busy and real estate's not their passion and they want to go do what they need to do.
Yeah. So no acronyms, no jargon.
Yeah, exactly. You got to break it down to, very, very simple terms. And that's easiest to digest. And then once you understand it, these entrepreneurs, they can make decisions, right? They don't need to be 100% comfortable. Like all of us, we've learned to make really good decisions with 80% of the information that we need. Because if you waited till you knew 100%, the opportunity would be gone. So we do tend to act pretty quickly on a short amount of information and in limited time frames. And you got to get to that 80% comfort level, make a decision, and then move on to the next. And that's how we're successful as entrepreneurs.
Have you always been a great communicator, or did you have to hone or refine that skill?
Well, now we're going to go back a bit. We're going to go back a bit in time. So I would say I haven't always been a good communicator. It's definitely something I've worked on. Like I took communication classes in college, which was kind of rare for an engineer. And you'll probably get a kick out of this. You may have known that I was a DJ for like 20 years.
I did
And
not.
yes, I was
Dad,
a
I've known you
DJ.
for like 15 years. Wow.
I was
I
a
knew
DJ for
Stan
20
was.
years
Okay.
with my partner, who, by the way, was my very first investor in my first deal. And I was the first investor in his first deal as he's a house flipper. So, anyways, that's
Cool.
a side note. But the way him and I kind of worked, and this was our first year in college, we started doing this. And I became more the MC and he became more the DJ. Just kind of the way it worked with our personalities. But I wasn't an MC. Like I didn't know it. So what we would do is before or after the gig, we would literally set up our equipment and I would MC and practice to an empty room, like a huge room, all the chairs, whatever it might be. And I would practice being an MC. We
You
would record
practiced.
it and then analyze it. Like a lot of practice went into that. And then lo and behold, like one of my big gigs, I was asked to MC the world championships for science projects, 5,000 people at the LA Convention Center. So a
Wow.
huge room, 5,000 people, and I'm the MC. And that was like a pinnacle. That was a really big deal. But where it started from was me in a room with my DJ partner, just filming and recording myself talking to try to learn and get better and better and better. And like anything else, you just put in the time and you will get better over time. So I wouldn't say I've always been naturally good at that, but I certainly practice a lot.
Well, you definitely are excellent. And it took deliberate practice because you don't have the ums, the ahs. You don't have those, what do they call those straggling words?
Yeah, some of that I learned in the TV hosting world, right? You got to have a good break point for editing. And I didn't know that at first either. Believe me, when I did my first TV hosting gig, I thought, oh, I've spoken in front of 5,000 people. I can speak in front of a few cameras. And it was totally different. It was so different. And I had different camera angles. And they say, okay, you need to talk this way and then stop here, look this way, say that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do all this stuff. And like I failed miserably. And I took the director at the end of the day, my very first day filming, I took the director and his name was Jason. I'm like, Jason, I'm so sorry. Like, I know I did horrible. I said, please, don't kick me to the curb yet. Let's go into the editing studio, help critique me on what I was doing wrong, what worked. I know maybe one thing I did was good. Let's look at that. I'll try to replicate it. We'll throw the rest out. And he did that. Like literally we went into the booth and we went through all my stuff and 95% of it was really bad. Some of it would work. And then I really focused and worked on that. And over the course of that first show I did, they wound up keeping me on for all the episodes. And then by the end of it, I had a much bigger role in the series. And then they did a second season of that show and made me more of like a co-host. And so that's kind of how it eventually worked. But my point is like, I was not that at the beginning. It took a lot of work and I still work at it. Even with these shows, I still will review myself, look at what worked, what didn't work, and try to make those fine improvements, fine tuning over time, and just to try to keep improving my game.
There's a fantastic book called Thanks for the Feedback, How to Receive Feedback, even if it's, not given in like the right way. And there's like 3 different types of feedback. And what you really wanted was critique. Because a lot of times when people ask for feedback, it's like, just tell me how great I am. But you really wanted to learn. And I think that that's one important thing for entrepreneurs who are listening is that they have to have the humility to know that they don't know everything and that there are blind spots.
Yeah, and that's a huge deal, especially with successful entrepreneurs. They can sometimes get a bit egotistical, right?
Yeah.
And to me, if you get to that ego state of mind, you're not going to grow anymore. You're going to plateau, right? And if you're not growing, you're shrinking, right? So plateauing and staying at the same level is very difficult in these times of change. So even though I've been successful in a few different areas, I'm always learning. Like you mentioned, I have 3 master's degrees. I just always want to keep learning. I never think that I'm there. Okay, I made it. I'm perfect, blah, blah, blah. I'm never there. I'm always trying to get to the next level and improve myself. And every entrepreneur can do that, right? And I think EO, naturally, I think we are a little bit more humble than most other people. at least we are in our circles, right? In our forums or in our very, very confidential circles. We are that. And we feed off each other. We nurture that with one another. But for me, I'm always trying to grow and improve. And I'm not afraid of the critique, which it's interesting. Your example with that book, like in Hollywood, like it's all egos, right? Oh yeah, tell me how great
How
it
great I
was,
am.
right? And your manager is telling you you're amazing and your agent doing this for you. And it's like, yeah, me. And I wasn't like that at all. And I've never been that way. And I think that's part of the reason why I get the directors to sit down with me and they'll tell you that I'm a good student, right? Because I listen, I want to critique. I don't think I'm the best I can be, and I want to keep improving.
And you never flaunt all your activity. I mean, your achievements, like these three masters. I don't think I've ever heard you say that you know how people are always dropping like, I know this person or I did this or whatever. Like you are so humble.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm very humble, almost embarrassed to talk about it at times, but I've learned to try to get a little bit more comfortable with that. Like, for instance, like when I tell people, like I never told people I was a rocket scientist, right? I mean, I worked on the space shuttle main engines doing structural dynamics on turbo machinery, which is like the most complex part of the engine for 7 years. Like I never talk about that, but people are interested in it. And they're like, wow, you were a rocket scientist turned into entrepreneur. Like, I don't talk about selling a business and having a really successful exit. And then real estate. I didn't talk about that, but I found out that people really find that interesting. So I'm forced myself to talk more about it now, although it's not really comfortable. So I don't lead with it, but I need to learn to be more comfortable with it because people are interested in it. And then, yeah, they do remember me and it helps them maybe connect with me on one level or another, whether it's, DJing or being an entrepreneur or doing like 5 full Ironman races, the master's degrees. Like there's a lot of different things, 5 kids. There's a lot of different things that people might be able to like connect with me on. So I try to share a little bit more than I used to because you're right. I never would share it at all before. I just, kept to myself and just kept working and blah, blah, blah. But I found that it doesn't help other people on their journey. So I try to be a little bit more open about it, but not from a bragging standpoint, just from a space of helping.
Yeah. And you're a phenomenal athlete. You talked about your triathlons, but you also give back. You had that philanthropy. Like, didn't you just do that ride across? What was that thing that you did?
Well, I mean, I've done AIDS ride from San Francisco to LA. I've done that twice. I've owned a sober living home for women and kids for 7 years, owned and operated that, which is another story. So yeah, I do try to give back. It gets difficult with time because I'm a bit busy right now with the family and the new business and all this. But giving back is pretty important to me, and I hope to be able to do more at some point in the future. But I think I've done my fair share of giving back.
Yeah. So tell us about your beautiful 5 kids. What's your typical day like? Like, how do you do it all?
Oh my gosh, the kids.
And
It's
they're
a lot.
entrepreneurs.
Yes, you're right. You're right. So yeah, it's a lot. And I've got 4 daughters and a son. So they range from 17, 13, 6, 3, and 1.5. And it's crazy. Like most people don't have that big of a spread. Most people don't have that many kids, but if they do have the kids, they're not spread out by 17 years. So it's a lot. The teenagers, they stay up till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, right? The 3-year-old and the 6-year-old, they're up at 6 a.m. And then the 1.5-year-old is up at 3 a.m. It's like, oh my God, it's so tiring. I got these bags under my eyes. I'm always so tired. And it's really, really tough. And being a good family guy is really important to me. I think it's an area I still fall short in. I try, but I'm raising this family on one income in LA and 3 kids in private school. Like I'm stretched, pretty thin financially. And so I have to work a lot and it's really hard to say no. So it is a balancing act right now. I don't think I'm very well balanced because I spend so much time working, but it is what it is. I do try to break away at least one day a week to spend time with the kids. I try, my goal is like once a month to have a 4-hour father-daughter time. Once a month, I try to do a 4-hour with just one kid. and once a week to have a date with my wife. I don't make it every month on either of those things, but I try. And so my 3-year-old, he's like, Daddy, can we please go have a father-daughter date, please? And, because that's all he hears is father-daughter. And he's just surrounded by glitter and all the pink stuff and all this stuff. But I mean, he's a boy's boy for sure, loves his monster trucks and whatnot. But he wanted his own father-daughter day. So it's pretty cute. I try to spend the time when I can. They love those one-on-one times with dad. And it's not as much as I'd like, which is part of the reason also why I think this third phase of my life is the right phase, because it's really going to give me, freedom later on when I can grow this passive income stream that I'm really working on. Right. So like when I was a W-2 guy, you literally trade time for money, right? However many hours you work, that's what you get paid. All right. That's the W-2 world. The entrepreneur world, okay, I can start to leverage other people's time, which is good. I can get paid a little bit of money for what those people are making. But entrepreneurs, they work a lot, right?
Yeah.
They work a ton and they pay themselves last, right? So they tend to can make more money, but it's the old adage, like, why would I want to work 40 hours for someone else when I can work 80 for myself?
Right.
That's the entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And then you move into this third phase of like my life that I'm in right now is like, to me, is really where it's at, where I can leverage real estate, leverage financing, get tax advantages that real estate provides, and create passive income. And when I do that over time, I think that's where I'm finally going to get to a spot where I don't have to trade time for money, whether it's W-2 or entrepreneur. And I'm going to have this continual passive income stream that's going to help support the lifestyle that I want. And it's not very far off. I'm working on it. I'm probably like 3 years out from getting there, but it's a lot of work now, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And also, I think you should share with your audience the amazing tools that you teach your daughters, right? You told me that didn't they have like a vending machine business and the slime business, and they know how to handle their money. Chad, come on. You're an awesome dad. Tell everyone what you do.
Teaching them entrepreneurship is a really big part of it. And I know, you've heard from the same people. You remember Richard and Linda Eyre, right? I've learned a lot from them on raising kids in affluent households, right? And how to avoid the entitlement trap. And I know you've read more books than anybody, but these are really good books about how to raise kids in today's environment. And it's interesting, when we were at one of our regional conferences down in Huntington Beach, and Richard and Linda were speaking, and they said, okay, this is a room of 400 multi-million-dollar businesses owners, right? That's the audience. And they said, okay, who in this audience had a job when they were 16 years old, right? Virtually the entire room raised their hand. Everyone had a job at 16. And they said, okay, those of you that have 16-year-old age kids or older, which one of your kids had a job when they were 16? And almost all the hands went down, right? I mean, and it was eye-opening for me. I know it was eye-opening for a lot of entrepreneurs there. They're like, wow, the things that gave me this grit, and I know you're a believer in grit, things that I learned growing up that gave me this grit to help me run this business when it's really, really hard, the next generation might not be getting it to the same level that we got to it. So that's a huge issue in society that I see. And I'm so far the other direction. My kids, I make them work for everything. I buy on the base level stuff that they might need, like clothes. They get base level clothes. If they want the extra stuff, they pay for the difference, right? Literally, we go out to dinner, I buy chicken level pricing. If they want the lobster, the shrimp, they pay the difference. And then my one daughter, she loves lobster, and she pays every time. She'll pay the extra to get the lobster. And if they need to borrow money from me for whatever reason, okay, I'll loan you money. I actually, it's interest free. You can have the money, but you only get one loan, and you need to pay it back before you get a second loan. And the best lessons happen when you tell your kid no, right? When your kid wants that fancy pair of jeans and they don't have the money for it, what is it for me to pay an extra $50 or $100 for a pair of jeans? Like, okay, it doesn't matter, right? But to them, it's a huge lesson learned. And the biggest lessons are learned when you tell them no. And so if they have my 6-year-old, she wanted to buy this. We went to SeaWorld and she wanted to buy a little keychain thing. She didn't have the $12. So she borrowed it and she didn't have the money to pay me back yet. And then she wanted candy at the store. Remember the $12 you owed me for the keychain? But Daddy, it's just a candy. And she didn't get the candy. But you know what? When we got home, she asked what chores she can do around the house to make money, to make the $12 to pay me back. And that's what happened. So yeah, they have a vending machine business. They also do like these amazing brookie cookie stands, lemonade stands. They figured out what corners are best, what time of the day is best, how to leverage grandma's cooking to get free inventory so it reduces their cost basis. Like they know everything. They know when to put sales on, when to charge premiums. Like they know so much about this stuff. That's amazing. Kids will learn it if you can give them the opportunity to learn it. Like, don't roll out the red carpet. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I had it so hard. I don't want my kids to have it so hard. Hey, you are who you are because you had it hard. That's what you need to lean into. And sometimes the best thing you can do for your kid is to tell them no, to teach them these lessons that are really hard, but it's going to be a much easier lesson to learn now than it is when they're 30 years old and they're sitting in your basement playing video games or something, you know, doing social media because they want to be an influencer, right? Everyone wants to be an influencer. Teach them the lessons now while they're young, and it will pay dividends later.
I interviewed this one other entrepreneur. She was actually a stepmom, and she said that they had the kids and her husband were going to Disneyland. And she said, if you misbehave, we're not going to go to Disneyland. And you know what? Of course, they misbehaved. She turned around the car and the three kids who were jonesing to go to Disneyland, they didn't get to go after they bought tickets. And they said to this day, that is the best lesson because she said no. She was a person of their word, just like you. Like you told them no. What does she want? Chocolate or something? No. Which is the opposite of freedom, which I wanted to mention, right? Because you think that entrepreneurs also need freedom, but they have to learn first, right? Like we can't just give them everything. I mean, that's not freedom. That's not the freedom you're saying that people should have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, another saying, you know, freedom is earned, is not given, right? Every generation in the US, you need to earn the freedom. And like Ronald Reagan said, freedom is one generation away from extinction. So you need to continually earn that. I mean, you know, kudos to that mom for doing that because, and it's interesting, before you said it, I in my mind, I'm thinking like they will never forget that lesson that they learned. And it's a very important lesson.
And I think because she probably looked at her kids, even they weren't her real, her stepkids, like they can handle it, because a lot of times we look at our kids and we're like, oh, they can't handle it. We don't look at them as heroes on their own journey. We don't look at them as heroes who have their own answers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you've done a great job with your daughters. How have you seen that change over time when they were young versus now? I think they're both in high school. How has that changed for you over time?
So they got their business, Conscious Kids Cookies. They were just featured in the Today Show on December. And so they got, like my daughter got an order last week from Activision. So they wanted 100 boxes of their signature assorted cookies and super calm. Like she was like, oh, I got this order. And she emailed them. And I'm just like, and me as an entrepreneur, I'm like, did she email back? Did she email back? And she's like, so cool. She's like, Mom, I'll just email her at the end of the day, like super chill, like not like me. I'm just like, we got to get that sale in, And so she was just like, and she's like, okay, so I need to order these stickers because we ran out. I have to do an inventory count on whether or not we have stickers in between, like her going to go get her nails.
That's so cool.
So great. I am asking her if she wanted to do a podcast, but she's like, no, like she knows exactly what she wants. Kelly Clarkson actually asked, their booker actually asked her to be on the show or them on the show. And she said no. And I said, why did you say no to the Kelly Clarkson show? And she said, because they wanted me to be someone I wasn't. They wanted me to be really gregarious and really like a big personality. She's like, Mom, I'm not. I'm just not that person. And she told no. And she was like, Mom, I don't even know who Kelly Clarkson is.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, good for her. I mean, I would believe that would be a response. She's obviously going to grow up to be a very strong woman like you. I mean, you're leading by example. They've got an unbelievable, role model in that regard with you. So I'm not surprised. I'm proud, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And we just finished college tours and my daughter was just like, she got a 1540 in her SAT. So she's pretty good. And, looking at Ivy League schools, but she goes, Mom, maybe I should just go to UCLA and live at home. Isn't that
Mm,
amazing? Like, I'm like, really? You want to be home? Right? When I
wow.
was in school, I'm just like, I'm getting the heck out of here. Yeah.
My daughter's the same way. She's applying to schools and she does not want to stay in California. She's like, which is fine. I was
Mhm.
California. All my degrees were California, but she wants to be out. I'm like, all right, you got to support them on their journey in that regard. But yeah, every kid's different. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So we'll see what happens. And now she's sitting for her permit. I mean, she's a little bit later, but is your kid driving yet? Your 17-year-old
Yeah,
probably
she has
driving.
her permit and actually taking her driver's test in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. See all
Yeah.
that and running this, what, $180 million real estate syndication. Amazing. You're so amazing.
It's a lot, but
So
thank
how
you.
can people, if they want to invest, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs listening, can people invest from everywhere, like all across the globe, like EO members from whoever, or?
So generally, they need to have an American entity to do it. So once they have that, then yeah, they can invest from anywhere. But yeah, you need to have, generally speaking, an EI number for a US based entity. And then, yeah, so basically our website, csqproperties.com or at CSQ Properties for any of the social media channels, LinkedIn. And it's interesting, CSQ stands for Challenge the Status Quo.
Wow.
So yeah, I helped develop that from one of our mutual friends, Jamie Duragi, who's amazing. Helped me find my why when I was on this kind of third journey of my career, and we came up with Challenge the Status Quo because that's kind of what I like to do. So that's the name of the company.
Jamie is phenomenal. Wasn't he like volunteer of the year for EO and served in
Yeah,
global and like was it EOLA president like twice? Like he is such a phenomenal and he helped create your brand. That's so great. Yeah.
he's amazing.
So what are some final words for the entrepreneurs that are listening? Any type of advice?
I'd kind of go back to the oxygen mask analogy. Time to time, take care of yourself. I think, at least in the EO network, the entrepreneurs organization has been amazing for both of us. I've been in for 10 years. You've been in for 15, maybe?
15. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an amazing organization. But within EO, we learn to take care of ourselves, like from a meditation standpoint, maybe from a health standpoint, maybe from a retreat standpoint, right? We kind of learn to take care of ourselves in that regard. But we never talk about taking care of ourselves financially. And that's what I'm trying to do from a passive income side. Because, if anyone who's experienced it in entrepreneurship, your business is going to go up and down. And despite how well you might feel that you're on top and it's going to go on forever, it usually doesn't, right? And even if you decided to get out of your business and had a successful exit, like it's nice to have some additional streams of income. So I would just encourage entrepreneurs to think about themselves first in that regard, but knowing that that's going to be a big benefit for your family or even for your legacy, right? Because these investments you can pass on to your heirs or create a legacy through real estate. That's what I would leave the listeners with.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. You're so inspiring. I mean, wow. I learned so much about you. Did not know you were a DJ. Did not know that you had all this deliberate practice behind you. And, I just love being around you. And hopefully we'll be able to meet soon. We have that EMP forum, Ninja, what the
Yeah, the
ninjas.
1% ninjas.
Yeah. That
Well,
we have
I'm
to
going to
get
see
together.
you at the chapter retreat, right? We'll be at the chapter retreat here in a month.
Oh, that's right. We'll see you there too. And maybe we'll see everyone there, Ken and Steve and you and Ben. Yeah. Thank you so much again. And everyone, please contact Chad if you have any questions regarding real estate, syndication, and passive income. He's your guy.
Awesome. Thanks, Kalika.
Thank you.